Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for, what day is this? The 21st, March 21st. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. My apologies for the hesitation and babble all at the same time. Only I can pull that off. Sure. Just want to announce we have two cases that have asked for postponement this evening. Panciaco Law representing the Island Pond Road has asked for a continuance. We'll come back to that. I just want to let folks know that may be here for that. And I lost my notes on that other
109
case. Yep, right here. 74 Beaver Lake Ave. That also has been requested to continue to another board meeting at another time. So those cases will not be heard this evening. So if you're here for that, just know we won't be hearing those this evening and you may leave. The board will make notice that you'll all be noticed for the new date when that hearing comes back, all right? Very good. Have a good evening.
Is a motion you need?
To direct any, Mr. Pelican, you want to assist them? Okay, thank you.
Is the chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Burgess.
Do you need a motion on that?
We'll come back to it. I'm just,
Alrighty.
it's a public information notice, so we'll come back to it in just a minute. So before we proceed any further, if we can get conversation out into the hallway so we can proceed with the meeting, I'd appreciate it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to contact code enforcement over the next few days, and they can assist you with any information. So, that being said, now let's get back to our normal process, which is introducing ourselves on all the way down to my far left, please.
Michael Donlin.
Gospel Bimba.
Crystal Morin, Secretary.
Lynn Perkins, Chair.
Craig Corbett, Vice Chair.
Donald Burgess, Donald Burgess.
Yeah, he is Donald Burgess, I can swear to that. And we have Code Enforcement Officer Robert Mackey as well this evening, and our clerk, Jeannie Rio, is in the back taking minutes. In the event of an emergency, please exit to the rear of the room. Don't use an elevator. These proceedings are scheduled to end at 10 p.m. and they are audio-video recorded. That being said, I'm going to, the first thing we're going to do is I'll take a motion to move the case number 24-112 to the end of the agenda. Mr. Tripp is tied up at the State House, and so we will deal with address the rehearing request at a later point in the agenda. Could I have a motion for that, please?
Make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
second it.
Corbett. Mr. Burgess seconds that. All in favor of that adjustment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Case number 24-108, Panciaco Law LLC has asked for a continuance to a date uncertain. Am I correct, Mr. Mackey?
I think the letter says to April 18th.
18th, yeah.
April 18th, thank you. A reminder that we are not meeting on April 4th. So if I could have a motion supporting that rescheduled point to April 18th.
I'll make the motion to table that till April 18th.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. A second, please.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Moran seconds that. All in favor of that continuance till April 18th for case number 24-108, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Next case postponed or tabled is case 24-109, which is 74 Beaver Lake Ave, has asked for a postponement, and so we will table that, a motion to table that to a date uncertain.
May 16th?
May 16th is a floater, however. I think it's a suggested date, but nonetheless, in that motion, just to cover that motion, the representing Promised Land Survey will renotice the abutters for that case whenever that date should come around. Could I have a motion for that, to table that?
I'll make the motion to table 24-109.
Thank you again, Mr. Burgess. Could I have a second on that, please?
Second. I'll second that.
Mr. Donlin will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that process is addressed. So the next case up, I'm sorry?
Would you like me to go get Tim?
Give him a minute.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bob
it's
did.
like we're playing musical
Bob went to get him.
chairs again. And Mr. Peliquin, you are up. We have Promised Land Survey LLC representing Dennis and Karen Lincoln, and that is case number 24-110. Welcome, Mr. Peliquin.
Thank you. I apologize for being slightly tardy as I was in the hallway, just helping the previous case that was postponed and just letting them know what our intentions are and
Got it.
trying to work with them.
And let me just pause you for just a minute. Mr. Donlin, are you capable of sitting on this case?
Willing.
You're willing?
Able?
Very good. We'll have Mr. Willing sit on this case then. Thank you.
Okay, terrific.
Please
So,
proceed, Mr. Peliquin.
thank you. I'm going to, as a procedure, I will read the points into the record and then give a little bit of a editorial on it. I don't know if Dennis Lincoln is here. He's welcome to come up and join me, but I'm not sure. He said he would be here. So the variance is to construct a 32 by 48 ADU on the second floor.
Hi, Karen Lincoln.
Oh, hi, Karen. On the second floor of the proposed detached two-bay garage. And then the points written that are written for the record are, number one, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because ADUs in general terms are an allowed use within the zoning district. Number two, the spirit of the zoning ordinance is observed because the existing 2.75 acre oversized lot located within the MDR district is large enough to support this detached garage, which is an allowed use, and finished ADU above. Substantial justice is done because the family residing at the subject property will have ample room to expand their housing needs. Number four, the value of surrounding properties are not diminished because new construction typically increases property values to the neighboring properties. Number five, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship for purposes of the subparagraph, unnecessary hardship, ... blah, blah, blah. Forgive me if I don't read them all. Via our request to detach this ADU per our plot plan, this area of the proposed ADU lends itself as its best at the best location for proposed addition, as the existing placement of garage under of home, its septic system, pool, and driveway do not readily provide ample alternatives. Secondarily, the allowed garage location would be able to be finished on the second floor to allow this oversized ADU. The second one is the proposed use is a reasonable one because, as mentioned, the family residing at the subject property will have ample room to expand their housing needs via an ADU, finished above a new garage to be constructed in an area that is well suited to the existing lot layout and improvements. And lastly, if the criteria in the subparagraph A are not established, I mentioned, as stated, the proposed detached garage, which is an allowed use, will be configured at its best location on the existing lot from both an aesthetic and also a practical standpoint, and a detached ADU may be placed above the said proposed garage with the support of a variance. So, just continuing with this, we know that there's 2 variance requests here, coupled with one. One is for a detached ADU. Your requirements require it to be attached to the existing building. I know in the past it's been allowed under certain circumstances. We hope that this would be favorable for a detached ADU in this scenario. And then secondly, part of our request is for an oversized ADU. The garage is designed, there is a floor plan and, there is a floor plan above of a potential ADU, but the idea is the garage is what is driving the potential living space above that garage, and for family use. And but the garage is an oversized garage, we recognize that, but that's for a purpose for a workshop and lawn storage and other things that is needed at the property. So with that, I'm going to pause and try to answer any questions the board would have, or members of the public, or Karen, did you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Covered well, yeah.
Okay, good. So with that, we'll try to answer any questions you all would have. Thank you.
Anybody wish to lead off?
I have a question, because I'm not good at math by any
Recognizing
means.
Ms. Moran.
How many square feet will it be?
50, so on the plot plan, I think, do I mention it on the plot plan? No, I don't. So it's 1536, I read it a minute ago, but let me go back to it.
Thank you.
1536 is correct. So a little bit more than 1,500 square feet.
Anything else, Mrs. Moran?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Mr. Burgess, anything from you?
Sure. How come you can't take that and put it next to the house? Where it would
I stated it in the
remove one of
record.
our problems.
Yep, I stated in the record, but basically, there's a garage under, so we say put it next to the house. There's a septic system in the front, there's a pool in the back, there's a well there. The driveway supports a drive-under garage, so to try to put the structure there, it's just not the most ample location. They wanted to detach it for the purposes that we're showing.
So how come we have to have, how come it's 48 by 32?
What's driving that is a garage workshop, which would be allowed. So the idea is they want to build that garage in that spot, so, which is an allowed use. So,
Oh, the building is a garage, no problem, I got that.
Correct.
But as the
correct, so
ADU
they
is the
would like to
problem.
finish the second floor of this.
Yeah. Well, the two things
For the
you
family
have is the fact that part of the requirement would be attached to a home, and the second part is the amount of footage,
Yes.
square footage, so.
Yes, I realize that, that's why we're here. Yep.
You can't put it.
Anything else, Mr. Burgess?
Not at the moment, I guess.
Mr. Corbett?
Mr. Pelican, when you state the underground garage, do you say the driveway is on top of that right now, or that building over, I'm trying to look at a picture of the property, building over the driveway as it stands would end up blocking use of that garage?
Yes, if an addition went on that side, we'd block that
Okay,
access
so you
to the
would just
garage.
lose access to the existing one.
Yes,
Thank you.
and then the structure would have to be larger, and taller, and,
To make up for what you would lose.
yes.
Understood. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Corbett?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Obimba?
Not to pry, but can you clarify just a little bit on the housing need for this
Yep,
request?
for a family member, which is an ADU allowed use, right? So ADUs are allowed for property and for family members of the property, particularly ADUs.
And the family is
And the
expanded?
requirement is 800 square feet.
All right.
and to be attached to the building. So that's why we have two things we're asking here.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, is the family expanding, or what prompts this need for the ADU that the
Yeah,
current
it's just
housing?
the family has expanding needs.
All right.
I think a point there to Mr. Obimba's question, and this is more information from Mr. Obimba, the ADU doesn't always have to be defined for a specific individual, but the space itself. But then the question comes into the infractions relative to the size and the disconnect of the structure itself. So,
Right.
Mr. Donald?
Sure, is the intention to put like a full 8-foot walls on top of the, like a true second story?
Yes. Which would be an allowed use regardless, even if it was storage.
So
As
talk
long as
about,
it
But it
doesn't
certainly
exceed the height.
changes the usable space to be actually 1536, not like 1,000 if it had knee walls.
Oh, are you asking if there's no foundation in the garage? That's not what you're asking. It's on a slab. The garage will be on a slab.
Right, there'll be a garage, and then there'll be an 8-foot wall and then a roof? Or the roof is going on the
There'll be
deck?
a garage, which will have 8, 10-foot walls, yes.
Yeah.
And then above that would be
ADU.
finished second story on this. We're asking for a finished second story. A second story would be allowed there as long as it didn't exceed a height regulation, which it won't. But that could be for storage without coming to you guys. But we're asking to finish it.
Right, I understand that, but I was speaking more to like the overage of square footage size-wise, and I was wondering if it was really just gonna be a finished second floor, like a half-story, if you will, then that substantially changes the square footage.
Right. Nope. They're hoping to finish the whole second floor, you know. That can be talked about as we go along, but as maybe these two variances get separated at some point. But
yeah, I think to emphasize Mr. Donlan's point, you know, you could do this, the first floor as the floor plan, or as the footprint shows, the 48 by 32, but then do a cape roof versus full second-story walls. That certainly inhibits the size of the ADU, but I think it starts to, it becomes more understandable in my view that if you said, we just want the workshop with the garage space as the footprint, but then we'll put a cape roof and then we'd like an ADU there, that becomes a little more
palatable, if you will.
yeah, I think, is that where you're going, Mr. Donlin?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Anything else, Ms. Donlin?
We're willing to hear what as this goes. Not to say this can be negotiated, but that's a good point. And
Okay. Mr. Corbett?
Yeah, I'm starting to go where Mr. Donlin went, the more I looked at it. So to the word palatable, 1536 is nearly double what would be allowed. So I guess, you know, the question kind of going, Mr. Donlin was, with not necessarily right to the roof, but is there any opportunity to get it closer to what would be the allowed space rather than nearly double?
yeah, with the idea that Michael, right? You go by Michael?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Or Mr. Donlin, sorry.
That's
The-
fine. Michael's
I
okay.
should be more formal. Mr. Donlin, the
Most
idea that
people
Mr.
just call me
Donlin
sir.
pointed out as terms of, because now I know what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
you're going to have these walls coming in a bit, and it's
Exactly,
it's
so if you
smaller
had a
footprint.
6-foot knee wall on each side, it would be more like 960, which is still over
No,
the
I was
8, but
about
a
to
lot
say
more
1,000 square
reasonable,
feet.
you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
And then if you did I'm not gonna tell you how to design it, but sheds and dormers and stuff, you could make it usable and a little more practical.
Yeah. Our proposal is still the way it is, like, because there is a design that we do have that is for a garage and a room above it, a finished room above it. But again, I just got to figure where the board may go with this, but basically, if it's too large of a footprint, my thought was originally, maybe we don't finish the whole part, if that was going to be a sticking point at any point. Maybe part of it's going to be for storage, part of it will be to be finished. So that is another option that I want to throw out, but yours, I never thought of. I'm not the architect designing this, but it's a good point to have a more dormered roof.
Yeah, I think that you're not just dealing, in my senses, and I haven't gotten to ask my questions, but, you know, in sculpting Mr. Donlan's questions, it's not just that, and followed by Mr. Corbett, it's not just that you're asking for 2 infractions relative to the ADU, but now you've got this bonus that is the size of it that starts to look, as you indicated earlier, a little palatable, and how does that fly? So just kind of honing in on those points of the discussions between you and Mr. Donlan at this point, and as well as Mr. Corbett. So, Mr. Corbett, you all set?
Yeah, those are all my questions at this point.
Mr. Burgess?
Yeah, well, that was one of the things I was thinking about, was split the baby in 2, and at least we'd get closer to what we're looking for.
I think one of the things that my question is, you know, what about the septic design? What's happening with that?
Yeah, of course, we know that as part of any of this, before any building permits would be had, we'll have to do a new septic design to accommodate this ADU combined with the building, you know, add a bedroom and a half basically to the septic design that exists, and make sure that's approvable by the DES.
How far apart are these 2 buildings going to be? See 116 feet.
I know,
that's to
so
the
I'm
boundary.
probably
the back lot.
saying
68.
80, 75 feet, something like that.
Do you think that you'd end up moving a leach field
No.
between the 2 buildings? Or do
No.
you think that you're trying to design a separate septic
I
system?
think I would keep the septic system in its same spot,
Okay.
but redesign a larger field at that point, because it's working.
I mean, your current septic
I was
system,
going to
and
ask that
I'm-
question.
I'm presuming the approved septic that's there currently is the tank and the leach field together?
The existing septic field, say it again, sir?
The approved septic that's there, that's all right. That's there, is that the tank and the leach field
Yes.
combined?
Yes.
Normal leach field, what is this, a 3-bedroom home, then you're gonna add an ADU?
Yep, so it'd probably be a 5, it's a 4-bedroom home, so it would have to be designed to 5.5 bedrooms.
And the 1.5 bedrooms is the total gallons per day calculation on an ADU?
125 gallons a day. Mhm.
That's a long way to carry waste.
Yep.
I'll let you
Yep.
confer with your client, so you're
That's
not
okay.
distracted. You
We-
can go ahead.
It's a long way, so it may be a grinder pump that would need to be, but that's not out of the realm of any design.
Okay.
So would you be possibly having 2 septic systems, or
No,
just one?
Just one.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, would that come under the inspections and DES, or would it go
well-
through the?
Let's narrow things down. We'll go to Mr. Mackey in just a second. Coming over to you, Mr. Mackey, not gonna leave you behind. You all set for right now, Mr. Welcome, thank you.
Yeah,
Mr.
something.
Promised Land? Mr. Mackey, you want to give us your input and
okay.
relevant to Mr. Burgess's question as
I
well?
mean, As far as the septic system goes, yeah, I mean, that would have to, what typically happens is when an ADU goes in, a new design has to be prepared that shows that that new use, that, that loading for the new ADU, whether it's 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. It's a little bit different calculation or loading-wise when it's an ADU, because I think the state figures, well, now you have another kitchen sink, you probably have another laundry. But typically, that plan has to be drawn up, get approved by the state, then it goes on file. Doesn't necessarily have to go in, as long as the system, there's a record of the system that they have, and that's functioning. Which I know for this property, we do have a 4-bedroom septic that I don't believe is that old.
Right.
On record, so that's how that generally works. So beyond that, just so everybody's clear again, I believe what they're asking for, at least right now, would be 2 full stories. So you got the garage story, then another full story all the way around, and then a roof above that with an attic space, assuming, or it might be trusses, I don't know. But it's not what you would think of as a roof on top of the garage, which you could possibly dormer or do something, because obviously if that's the case, then your livable space goes way down, because now you've got roof peaks to deal with, unless you put a dormer on or something. So, but I think what they'd like is 2 full stories. Beyond that, I think you have the gist of it. It's detached, and the fact that it's bigger than the 800 square feet is why they're here.
I will, if I can just make one
Yeah.
comment after consulting with my clients here, and that is, there is a design, they've worked with an architect already, design of the garage, particularly in the walls and the roof, and it is trusses. And our proposal is what it is on this paper. However, and it is definitely detached is what we're asking for the reasons that we've asked for detached. However, I just want to be on record, if the size is too much to ask for, we don't want to go with the dormers. We want to keep the design that it is, because he's already invested with the architect, but if he has to make the ADU, she has to make the ADU a little smaller to comply. That may be doable, but there's going to be a lot of unused space up there. So we're asking for whatever this board in the end of the discussion may allow, if you allow anything here.
Yeah. And certainly, I think I was just trying to capture Mr. Donlan's question. This board
And
is
it was a
going
good one.
to dictate to you how you have to design it.
Sure.
If it meets the compliance of residential 1 and 2 and whatever, and you have that space. But I think Mr. Donlan was trying to hone in on the necessity of why it's such a large space.
Yes.
And understandably, you're not looking to reduce the size of the footprint. That's
right.
And based on your testimony and what you've presented already, that seems justifiable for what you're trying to achieve. Anybody else have follow-up at this point, or you're all set? All right, thank you, Mr. Mackey. All right, well, at this point, let's, if there's no other questions, let's take a trip to the public and see what we have out there. We have, Mr. Corbett, I'll let you handle the phone numbers and whatnot, but we'll make a call to the public. Anybody wishing to support this application at this time, this would be your opportunity to come forward. For anybody who's remote out there, we have some phone numbers there. Mr. Corbett?
Yes, anybody at home who wishes to dial in, you're going to dial 646-558-8656. Your meeting ID is 323-909-140, and once you're in, you'll press *9 to raise your hand. If you're having any technical issues, please dial 603-845-5585, and someone will help you.
All right, very good. Not seeing anybody come forward at this point, so the...
There is. We have one.
Oh, we do, okay. Come on up, folks. You're speaking in favor? Okay.
Hi, we're Jill and Drew Rothwell. We live at 8 Craven.
Okay.
So we'd be closest to the new structure. We just wanted to speak on, they've made a lot of improvements to their property over the years, and there's been no shortcuts, very respectable to any of our needs. And yeah, just wanted to touch on that.
Yep, they've been working with us the whole way because we abut their property, so.
Yep, okay.
Just general improvements, taking down trees and stuff like that.
Being good neighbors.
Yes.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Anything else? No, okay.
Thank you.
Anybody out there remotely there, Mr. Preventure?
Seeing none, rise online, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. We'll consider that all in favors have come forward. Anybody opposed to this application, this would be your opportunity to come forward and have your voice heard. That applies as well to anybody who is remote. And seeing no one rise here as well. Time, anybody there remotely there for that, Mr.?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we'll consider that we've met, that the board has met the criteria for public input, and see if we can follow up with any last-minute details before we start to deliberate on this.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes,
Mr. Pelican, maybe, I don't know how far along you guys have gone, but if you were to start to look at opportunities to reduce the living area footprint only, how do you think you would accomplish that? What would, and do we see an area at all, I don't know, just looking at it high level, you see an instant, here's stuff that we can remove and not necessarily a necessity to get rid of? Do you have anything in mind at this point, or?
And I'm going to let my client speak, but I will tell you, we did look at that. He does have an architect that's designed a beautiful living space, right, above there, that would meet their needs. And I looked at it just to say, well, if you, and maybe make this more of a storage area, but that's not going to be my call. So I definitely want to defer to Dennis.
absolutely.
Yes, we do have a provision for a smaller living space upstairs. So the goal would be, we'd finish the front half, or the back half, I should say, and leave the front half unfinished, in storage space,
Okay.
which would be about 850 square feet.
So if they had to comply with that 800, we may do that. We can do that, I guess, is what he's saying. However, there'll be a lot of unused space up there, so anything, but the garage is what's driving this. The footprint of the garage is what's driving the living space above.
Yep.
So
And-
I can tell you that.
And then understanding that now half of it in that scenario is somewhat unused, or is basically unused at this time, the usable space up there, would that be enough to suit the needs of the growing family, or maybe not the
800
growing
square feet
family,
is
but
what
the
he said.
family members in need, or?
It would be enough. Obviously, the ask is to finish the whole thing because it just makes sense. But if that's what it came to, yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, the intentions of the ADU are just accessory housing, not to create multiple houses on one lot, correct?
Understood. And it is a one-bedroom design, even at the full 1,550 square feet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Big bedroom.
Penthouse.
All right.
Cave.
We're going to move forward into deliberation. Just before we go into that, right now we have this application before us. My sense is that trying to negotiate and figure out what size actually fits is not so beneficial at this moment. Am I correct? If that were to become a question?
Yeah, no, we're prepared to negotiate that.
And I don't mean to say negotiate as in, we'll trade this one for future draft considerations, but I want to make it clear that Mr. Pelican has suggested something here this board has modified in the past on different applications. I don't want to put you in a pinch if you're not prepared to have a request for a footprint on the top floor that you may have to come back later and say, well, this isn't going to work, it's 50 feet off. So I'm kind of laying that out to you at this point before the board goes into deliberation.
We understood that this was a possibility,
Okay.
and we've designed around this potential
Okay.
situation.
So if we need to conform to the precise regulation, we will. If there's something negotiable to 1,000 square feet or something because there's so much unused space up there, fantastic, but I'm not going to put that on the board. We're at your mercy.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
you've given us the input and some leads for direction, so at that point, we can take a motion for deliberation.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that.
I'll make the motion to go into deliberative session.
I'll second that.
Just
Excuse
has
me.
a motion for deliberation. Mr. Corbett has a second. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Anybody wish to lead off?
I think overall, I understand the need for the garage to be across the property. Looking at the size of what they're trying to accomplish now and understanding the current garage on the house being underneath it, that putting it to attach it to the house, that really you'd be losing more parking, which would, completely defeats the purpose. So I don't have a problem with the ADU being attached in this situation. As I voiced before, I do have some concern just over the large footprint of the living area, being that it's so excessive over the 800. Personally, if it can fit at that lower, the potential half the size, I think that, obviously that's ideal. That's within the 800. However, in the event that they look at it after they did a redesign, realize they wanted a few more, or a little bit more, to your point, that it may come back a little over 800 after a redesign, I'd be happy to, look at it at that point for an additional variance in that regard. But I have a tough time just with 1536 and being nearly double the allowed amount on top of, also being detached. I think now we start to enter into too many needs for a variance.
Variables, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Mr. Donlin?
yeah, I too don't have any problem with the detachedness of the garage or the location of the garage. It makes sense not to block their other garage, especially if they're going to be making a larger workspace, and who doesn't want a 32 by 48 garage or a 60 by 48 garage if we're being realistic. But I do have a serious problem with the overreach on the square footage. I will point out as well that an unethical person could have just got an 800, just not applied for extra and built an 800 and then did whatever they wanted after the CO, much like I think that it could go that way, not to imply that anybody in this room is unethical right now, but that the same thing could happen if we cut it in half now and then there's some, 24 by 20 storage in the back that is obviously easily converted into a bedroom once Bob leaves. So that being said, I realize that could have been an option one way or the other, I suppose, in that other world. But I just don't like the optics of a whole nother house going on a lot.
We had a case, I think about a year or so ago, where actually it's more during the pandemic, closer maybe 2-3 years ago, where someone had purchased this with the intent, and it was during the septic approval inspection or somewhere along the line that it was picked up that there was an ADU going in above a detached garage. So these things always have a way of coming back around, and I think the qualified engineered professionals understand that, but that's not to say someone else might not, outside of that circle, might not try to do that same thing. So I understand that point on both sides, Mr. Donlin. Anything else there, Mr. Donlin?
I don't believe so. They answered the redesign. Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to add right now.
Okay. Mr. Burgess?
I'm in the same mind as Mr. Donlin. I'm not big on making this the whole length of the property. And he did say that he had another design that would restrict it down to the amount of the ADU, or in that ballpark. I'd much rather see that. I think that's it,
Okay. Mrs. Moran?
I had the same thoughts as Mr. Donlin, and the footprint is going to stay what it is, no matter what. So using the space or having it occupy totes and Christmas decorations, it's kind of makes no sense to me. That no matter what, it's being used. So putting the restriction on it is kind of silly, I guess, in my thought, because it's going to be used whether it's heated or not heated, I guess. And being detached, I understand.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to do some calculations here, just briefly for a minute. The garage is 32 feet wide.
48 long.
And I'm trying to calculate what that actually looks like in space.
It looks like all the split level ranches around town.
Well, it's 32 by 28, or
No,
48, I'm sorry.
1536 minus what,
768, cut it in half.
another.
Well, I'm trying to see, if you took 32 feet and you use the whole front of it, and imagining how, instead of taking like a quarter of the upstairs outright, trying to make one rectangular shape is what I'm trying to calculate out, and what that actually looks like. So 20 foot, so 32 foot across by 20 foot deep gives you 640 square feet. I'm working with my flip phone calculator. And it's rather not cooperating. with me.
Mr. Chairman?
I don't want
I
a different device.
Yeah.
I'm going to pack a calculator in my bag.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Burgess.
I did a little I took a 31 to 47, taking a foot off for walls.
Okay.
Okay, so it came up 1457.
I'm sorry, again?
1457? If you take a foot off for walls.
Oh, I understand, yeah.
Okay,
728 and a half.
there we go. So a little over half the 1457 would be minus, what is it, 800 or 8? Is it 8 or 850?
800.
It's 800, so.
So 32 times 26 is 832 square feet.
Okay.
And trying to make sense of the upstairs structure, so let me just speak to the merits of the application that's being requested. I get a little bothered by the size of the building that's being requested on the application, because it's
Huge.
it's almost a second residence on the property. There's ranches in town that are 1,100 and 1,200 square feet, and this structure that's being proposed gives you a larger design than that alone. So, but trying to make sense of that second floor and taking into consideration Mr. Burgess's point, where you actually lose a foot on the width, so it's 31 feet, not 32, of habitable space. But somewhere around there is a 32 by 26 square foot area creates 832 square feet. I would be amendable to modifying this application so that it falls somewhere between 800 and 900 square feet. But I wouldn't be supportive beyond that for an ADU. And so it's the detached thing, I think sometimes we've had some agreement on such applications, so I can live with that. But the whole idea to ADUs, their purposes and reasoning and how they were created, creating something larger than that isn't something I'm interested in. So the board can make an amendment of somewhere between, modifying this somewhere between 800 and 900 square feet,
Just split it, 850?
I say not to exceed 900 when setting the motion.
Not to exceed 900, I like
Okay,
that.
that works.
That would work for me, and it's a pretty sizable unit. I know myself, I have a 24 by 24 foot area that at one point I had considered purposeful for this same reason. And being one bedroom in space for an older child to reside in fits that as well as a mother-in-law. So, anyway, I like Mr. Corbett's suggestion there, not to exceed the 900 square feet. I'm for approving that in the application, and if that doesn't fly for the applicant, then they would have to come back at a later point and ask for some modification to that, and that door is open. That way, this keeps this in the spirit that the applicant has been asking for, and helps them move along, and if this doesn't work for them, they can come back at a later point. Anybody have any concerns with that, or disagreements, debate about it? Mr. Donlin? No, that fits for you? Okay,
As presented.
okay. I'm sorry again?
I said as presented, right?
We'll modify it to not exceed the 900 square feet,
Very good.
okay? Mr. Burgess and Mr. Corbett, you both fine with that?
Good with that?
Yeah, I agree with the fact that in the event, they find it doesn't work for whatever reason,
Okay.
come back and look for further relief if necessary.
All right, so let's modify and work on this, and
I just added not, took away 800 and put 900.
yeah, I think that is how that's read.
Raven, right? Yep,
Let's see here.
not to exceed 900
You should say
square
not to
feet.
exceed 900 square feet.
Because it's still exceeding what would be allowed, so they're gonna need the second variance still.
Well, it should say area not, you'll modify this to the proposed living area not to exceed, and then change the 800 to 900, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does that make sense to you as well, Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
All right, so we have that modification, and we have the subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections. Of course, Mr. Mackey has explained that process for qualification to the septic design as well. So if there are no other conditions to this motion, we can come out of deliberation.
I'll make the move to come out of deliberative sessions.
Okay, motion by Mr. Burgess, second by Mr. Donnelly.
So a second, yep.
Okay, Ms. Donnelly has a second. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, Mrs. Moore, and you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 24-110, Promise Land Survey, LLC, owner Dennis and Karen Lincoln, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 3, Sections 165-25.d and e of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit, ADU, with a proposed living area to not exceed 900 square feet at 10 Craven Terrace, parcel ID 02126, zoned MDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have one, subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections, and that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second.
I'll make that second.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Burgess has a second on that motion. Let's read into the record. Finding of fact, do you have one?
Finding of fact for case 24-110, the board found that the applicants are requesting a variance to the terms of Article 3, Sections 165-25D and E to allow the construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit, also known as an ADU, with the proposed living area to exceed 800 square feet at 10 Craven Terrace. Property is located in the medium-density residential zone. The proposal is to construct a 48 by 32-foot detached garage on the right side of the property and have an ADU on the second floor containing 1,536 square feet of living space. The Town of Derry zoning regulations, Article 3, Sections 165-25, allow for the creation of an ADU, but the regulations require the unit be attached to the main dwelling and living area cannot exceed 800 square feet. Therefore, variance is being requested. If approved, a new septic system would will need to be approved by the state, showing the increased lot loading. And the board amended the application to state that it will no longer exceed 900 square feet. Board also includes all facts found in the meeting minutes for this application and incorporates all meeting minutes into its finding of facts and decisions.
Very good. Any amendments to the finding of fact or changes? Seeing none, so therefore we have the motion on the floor has been accepted. All in favor of moving that motion for a vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, so let me poll the board. Mr. Donlin?
I'll vote yes.
Okay, Mr. Burgess?
I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Also vote yes.
Mrs. Moran?
And Chair, I'll vote yes as well.
And Chair will vote yes as well, making it unanimous 5-0. So gentlemen, you have your information there, and you can let us, code enforcement, know if you run into a problem there, okay?
As always, thank you so much for your time. Excellent
Thank
deliberation.
you very much.
Have a great day. Good luck.
Yeah, you just open it up. It's a non-public input, so it's just amongst the board, but, so you review, you open up, you review the heading of it, and then discussion about it. If you see something on it later. No, you don't. You can hide the concerns that you have for it and open it.
Got it. Okay.
All right, very good. Next case up is Peak Premises LLC, and that is owner Lynn Colagero. Sorry again. And that's case number 24-111.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
24-111.
I'm Lynn Calagero, Managing Member, Peak Premises.
Very good, thank you. And just, if you've been with us a number of times, so go ahead with your
I
normal,
have.
with the
Hi,
normal
everybody.
protocol.
Okay, number one, the variance will not be contrary to public interest because the property has existed as a duplex for over 100 years. We're merely asking for a restoration of this status. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because no additional dwelling units will be added over its most recent use. Substantial justice is done because loss of duplex status, reducing options to only a single-family residence, is not a gain to the community in that Derry needs additional housing units. Number four, the value of surrounding properties are not diminished because we purchased this building for $185,000. The sooner we get a desirable structure in place, the sooner abutting properties will realize their full market potential. Number five, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. For purposes of this subparagraph, unnecessary hardship means that owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provisions and the specific application that the provision to the property. Property is on tax records as a duplex. Current zoning only supports a single-family residence, even though the lot is larger than 88% of the duplexes on the street. The proposed use is a reasonable one. If we are granted our petition, the new duplex will be more conforming than the existing structure because we have the opportunity to conform to the current zoning setbacks. If the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to establish a reasonable use of it. This property sat vacant for 3 years due to fire, foreclosure, and then COVID. These delays caused a forfeiture of its grandfathered duplex status. We're merely seeking a restoration of this status.
All right, very good. And please proceed. I know I've seen the image of this, but I'll have you narrate through it, if you would, Ms. Calagugero.
Sure. Just a couple of points that I wanted to stress is that the current structure is positioned close to the front and side setbacks. It's not conforming to zoning. We can improve on this by positioning a new footprint within current zoning setbacks. The tax records, tax payments, prior sale records, etc., all observe this structure as a duplex. The property doesn't lend itself to a homeowner purchase because it would be cheaper for a homeowner to renovate an existing property that conforms to zoning than it would be for someone to purchase this property, raise the structure, and begin new on the lot. And finally, the longer this structure sits in its current burned-out status, the longer it continues to be a blight on the neighborhood, reducing all property values and reminding residents of a tragic event.
We had, on your prior proposal, there was discussion about driveway location. Where are you thinking on this? I see this plan here, which is your existing conditions, but where do you see the positioning of this?
The plan that we're thinking about has garages for each unit, and the structure would most fit a driveway coming straight in from the street in
Okay.
front of the structure.
So the image that we have here is not
Yeah.
necessarily?
Oh, excuse me. I was thinking the garages were in the front. No, they're on the side then.
Okay.
I apologize.
And you're going to, so you're what, centering this in the between?
Yeah, we would center it.
And you have enough turning radius for the driveways for both cars, okay?
There's a lot of room.
Yep, I like the plan, I like the green and the grass. Anybody else questions?
Those 2 trees are gonna go bye-bye, I guess?
While we're clearing the lot, that could happen.
Yeah, well, it looks like, because if you're gonna put the building back where it's supposed to be 30 feet from your property line.
It makes most sense to take
that's
care
one
of those
thing-
trees at that time, yes.
The one thing we had a problem with a few years ago was the difference between the street and the property line. It has to be, the footage is from the property line, not the street. And if you make that mistake, you're gonna have problems probably, because we had a big time about that at that time. But anyway, so that, yeah, it looks like that might be the problem. So there's enough room to put 2 garages along the side of these?
They're not along the side. I didn't give you all of the elevations. They're under or attached to. I wish I had the plan in front of me, but I don't.
The garage unders.
Yeah.
Garage under, interesting. Okay. So everything's gonna fit?
Everything would fit.
Within the current regulations, all right. Interesting.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bimba, would you sit on this one, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Any questions from Mr. Obimba?
All set.
Okay, how about you, Mr. Donlin?
I'm somewhat curious as the square footage differences between the old and the new.
Yeah, that's something.
I couldn't find it.
Do you have a proposal on that size?
I don't have the square footage of the new in front of me.
But you're meeting the setbacks?
I am meeting the setbacks.
And there is a percentage of lot coverage one way or the other anyways, right? So,
Right.
yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Mrs. Moran?
I have no questions. I understand why.
Very good. All right. Mr. Mackey, I know this is almost a duplicate of a few weeks ago, but anything you wish to add from staff?
No, just other than what the board is actually deliberating on, because the underlying zoning is medium-high-density residential, which does allow for single families, two families, and multifamily. But the fact that it sat there, so we determined that the use has been basically abandoned, so it's reverted to the underlying lot requirements, which in this case, for a two-family, would be 10,000 square feet per dwelling unit. This property has about 16,500, so it's short like 3,500 square feet. If it was 20,000, then the applicant wouldn't be here because it could be built by right. The only other thing that I'd address is with the front setback that Mr. Burgess was talking about, there is a provision in our zoning that does allow for you to be able to use the average front setback. So if you look at that property, go 300 feet to the right, 300 feet to the left, same side of the street, you're allowed to calculate that average and then build your setback to that average, which may come into play here in this particular neighborhood.
The site plan that I presented in the last time I was here for this property showed that average.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good enough. Anybody else have any follow-up?
I was just gonna, Mr. Mack kind of hit, I was gonna state, it looks like it meets everything just other than the lot size.
Yeah.
That we're just short 3,500, but overall, it's a nice, nice looking request.
Yeah, I think it establishes a good placement and it meets the spirit and puts you back to where you were when you originally purchased it, right? All right, well, let's make a call to public. Anybody who could be aggrieved by this application and wishes to speak to it favorably, you may come up at this time and let your thoughts be heard. We also have the phone numbers for anybody who's remote. Mr. Corbett would like to read those in.
Yep, anybody who wishes to dial in at home, you're gonna dial 646-558-8656. Your meeting ID is 323-909-140. Once you're in, you're gonna press *9 to raise your hand. And if you're having any technical issues, we ask that you dial 603-845-5585 and someone will help you.
All right, very good. And seeing no one rise there, Mr. Preventer, anybody out there?
Seeing none rise online, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. So at this point, we'll call to anybody who is in opposition of this application, direct abutters or people who could be aggrieved by this. This would be your opportunity to come forward and be heard as well. Seeing no one rise here, we'll let that call go out to the remote world for a couple of seconds. Anybody there, Mr. Preventer?
Seeing none rise and no one trying to sign in, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. So we'll consider that we've met the statutes for public input on this matter and can proceed on. If no one else has any other questions, we can move into a deliberation if we'd like to make that motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Mr. Corbett has the motion for deliberation. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Mr. Burgess seconds that. All in favor of deliberation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, no opposed, so we are in deliberation. Anybody wish to start off? Mr. Corbett?
I think that all things considered, especially hearing, I think historically I was in favor of, the prior proposal. Admittedly, I think this fits the characteristics even more, going back as close, I don't want to say within the existing footprint, but as close to the footprint, meeting all of the setbacks. Really just here for a slight relief on the square footage to get this back into, the grandfathered status due to everything that took place. I'm in favor of this.
Very good. Mrs. Moran?
I agree with this proposal, and considering the history of the property, I can appreciate that she's proceeded with compassion, or from at least what I've seen, and that says a lot.
Okay. Mr. Obimba?
I believe it's a very reasonable request, in line with the original one. Meets everything required except for the size. They've done I think the redoing of this is very reasonable and agrees with the character of the neighborhood. I was thinking if COVID didn't happen and the foreclosure, then they wouldn't be here because it would have been grandfathered in. So that to me speaks volume of the work and good intentions they have had to come and request the board for this.
Okay, very good. Mr. Burgess?
The only thing I'm apprehensive about is the amount of footage from the front to the road with the garage under. Is, a lot of these, nowadays, the trucks, they're very long. I've got an F-350, it's a monster. If it's not far enough off the street, then it's gonna be sticking out in the street and causing a problem. So that's the only problem I have, is making sure it gets far enough back.
Well, understand that the driveways are coming in around the side, and they are garage unders, so to speak. So they're gonna go around the side and hook into the side.
Oh, they're coming in from, I didn't get that.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry, oh, my mistake. That's a different story.
So other than that, that fits your palate all right?
That's better, yeah.
Okay, very good. And Mr. Corbett, you've already spoken, so I guess it's my turn. I like this. I'm impressed with the image that's being presented, whether that's identical to what's built or some modifications. I think it creates a nice balance on the lot and brings some conformity to it and gives the applicant the grandfathering back that was originally there. So I'm pretty much in favor. I have no objections to this at all. Mr. Mackey's spoken to the averaging setbacks and to meet within the neighborhood, and regardless of that, I think this is going to make a nice lot and a nice piece of real estate. So other than that, I have no opinions on the matter. So we can, I think I've said my piece. I don't think that I don't see anything else to structure on this motion. State and town permits and inspections are pretty much the norm, and I don't see any reason to try and add anything else here. So anybody else have anything to add to that? If not,
Nope.
we can move out of deliberation.
Make a motion to adjourn deliberation.
Very good.
And I will second that.
Mr. Corbett has that motion, and Mr. Burgess has a second. All in favor of coming out of deliberation, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we're out of deliberation. Mrs. Moran, you have a motion to read.
I do, thank you. I make a motion on case number 24-111 Peak Premises LLC, Lynn Calgaro, to grant a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-45.b.1.a.ii of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of a two-family dwelling on the property, which contains 16,500 square feet in area where 20,000 square feet is required at 27 Mount Pleasant Street, parcel ID 32054, zoned MHDR, as presented with the following conditions. We have one, subject to obtaining all state and town permits and inspections, and that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second, please.
I'll second it.
Mr. Burgess has a second on the motion. That motion's on the floor, so let's read in finding of fact.
Finding of fact for case 24-111, the board found that the applicant is requesting a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-45B.1.a.ii to allow the construction of a two-family dwelling on the property which contains 16,500 square feet at 27 Mount Pleasant Street, parcel ID 32054. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow a two-family structure to be reconstructed on the property. The structure is currently assessed as a two-family dwelling. However, due to a fire in 2021, the structure has been vacant and has been deemed uninhabitable. The property is located in the medium-high-density residential zoning district, which allows for the construction of a two-family dwelling with the required lot area of 10,000 square feet per dwelling unit or 20,000 square feet for a two-family dwelling. As the property in question contains 16,500 square feet where the 20,000 is required, and the property has sat vacant for over 2 years, the nonconforming status with regard to the lot area has expired. That would be referenced at Article 13, Section 165-106C. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a variance. It's been represented that the setback requirements will be met. The board also includes all facts found in the meeting minutes for this application and incorporates all meeting minutes into its facts and decisions.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Any amendments to the finding of fact? Seeing no gestures there. So the motion's on the floor. Let me move the motion. All in favor of moving the motion for a vote, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Obimba?
Yes.
And
Ms. Moran.
Mrs. Moran, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess?
I'll say yes also.
All right, and the chair will make that unanimous as well, so vote of 5-0. Congratulations, your application is approved. Anybody aggrieved by this has 30 days, of course, to ask this board for a rehearing and reconsideration, and after that, recourse will be to Superior Court. So I'm looking forward to seeing this build and having that property cleaned up. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good night. Good luck.
Mr. Preventure, can we take 5?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
put us on a silent break?
Let's go quiet.
Very good. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break and Next up is the rehearing request, 24-107. And Mr. Corbett chaired that, so we'll leave it to Mr. Chair to Mr. Corbett to chair that one again. Mr. Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It should be noted that Mr. Tripp, not currently here, I do need an alternate to sit in. Mr. Perkins, do you feel comfortable sitting in on the rehearing requests for tonight?
Yeah, I was present for that hearing, so I can discuss the merits on the rehearing request.
Thank you. So, Ms. Rumwick submitted a document to us that I suspect the board has had a chance to review, and I do want to open up for discussion. As I read through, I did notice some points in here that I do think were some valid items that were called out. The second one, number 2, stating how the variance request, as recommended, to be looked at, as a new variance rather than the 1989 variance. I thought that was valid. I also thought it was a very valid concern that the concern of the access for a fire truck was not brought forward until we entered deliberative session, not giving the property owner any chance to discuss that with us prior, especially as we look in further with a letter from the fire department. Doesn't necessarily have a concern there. So looking through, those are the 2 that jumped out at me. Before diving in for anything else, I wanted to open this up to the board to get some other thoughts, to see if there were any concerns raised that you felt were valid. So I'll start over, all right, Mr. Burgess, was there anything on here in particular that you would want to discuss in detail, or?
Well, the thing, I was looking through this, and yeah, there's some, I saw all the letters you did. Excuse me, all of a sudden, yeah, let somebody else talk for a minute, I'll come back.
All right. We'll go with Ms. Moran. Kick it over to you.
I am empathetic to the one thing about having it mentioned in deliberative session, so she didn't have an opportunity to respond. I don't know what her response would have been, because I can't put words in her mouth, but I do feel that that is something that she should be able to have a rebuttal to, because it's a huge fact that someone used.
Okay. You want me to?
Yeah.
Okay. From when I looked through the whole thing, I found that new drawing was here. Okay, at the back, that he's showing a whole different configuration. So we're not debating this in the same set, as I recall. Because what she said, what she's telling us about is she wants to do a whole different scheme where they're going to cut back on the side of the building. So wouldn't this end up being a totally new request for a zone, a new request for an adjustment on the zoning? Because we're taking we're changing the 1.5 foot from 1 foot 11 inches or something like that. I can't remember the dimension right off my head. And they're saying that they're going to have like 2'6" or 2'8" or something to that effect. So it's a whole new proposition.
Mr. Chair, if I can
Yes, Mr.
interject
Perkins.
there. I think one of the things to understand historically, and we saw this evening, that the board is tempted at times to modify in place, but I think just to look at the merits, and as Mr. Corbett the chair has expressed here, and as well as Mrs. Moran, is that there are merits that were introduced here and not properly vetted. I think to case law that we've cited in the past, that creates a hazard to not hear the applicant's further points on the matter. So if the applicant were to modify this, I understand Mr. Burgess's point, and we saw that with the first case this evening, was that we amended the application, but if it's not satisfactory to the applicant, they can come back at a later point. But we also made a modification, but it doesn't excuse the merits that the applicant is requesting under the rehearing request. Essentially, I concur with Mr. Corbett and Mrs. Moran.
Thank you. And I'll bounce over to Mr. Obimba. I know you were here before the case. Just want to get your thoughts on any of the items that have been raised so far.
I think I agree with what how you steer that. I agree with those points. I had a question on last time when we deliberated that there wasn't a. We had two options to either consider this as a new application and ignore the variance from 1989, or consider the existing variance in place, and that direction wasn't given. Are we clear now? Because here it states as if we decided that we were treating this as a completely new variance without consideration of the old one. Are we clear on which path the board is taking?
Well, just because it was recommended, I don't necessarily think that you have to take a recommendation, right? You know, that's why someone does it. But I think a discussion should have at least taken place, you know, at least towards, in my opinion, towards the property owner of why we felt the variance should still be there. You know, it's called out, I felt it was vague. You know, we don't really know what the left side of the property was. Do they mean the left side of the house? Do they mean the left part of the duplex? So, while I don't necessarily agree with the statement that because someone said it, that's how we had to do it, I do think that we should have entertained it more and probably had that discussion and got the board to a consensus where that didn't happen.
Yeah,
by no fault
exactly,
of the board.
and to me, that's one of the what qualifies as a merit to grant a rehearing, because those terms were not clearly established when we discussed and deliberated on that case. Other than that, I think I agree with the other merits you've stated, and I think it's reasonable. We have some information that we didn't give the applicant a chance to rebut and or to hear her views. So I believe it's fair that we give them a chance so we can ask further questions if we have.
Okay. So that's the 5 members who were sitting on the case previously. I don't believe we need to enter a deliberative to go into a rehearing. So if anybody has nothing else to add, Ms. Moran, I will send it over to you to read the motion that we have. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add before we get there? Okay, Ms. Moran.
How do you, the last name, will you give me the pronunciation?
I go with Rumwich.
At least we both messed
I'll
it
let-
up. Yeah. All right, I make a motion to grant a rehearing of case 24-107, Amanda Rumwick, for a variance to the terms of Article 6, Section 165-47.b.4 of the Town of Derry zoning ordinance to allow the construction of an addition less than 15 feet from the side property line at 3L Rocco Drive, parcel ID 02011-033L, zoned LMDR. And that concludes the reading of the motion. I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Get a second from Mr. Obimbo, which puts the motion on the floor. With that, I will send this right into a vote. I will go all the way down to my far left. I'll start with you, Mr. Obimba.
I'll vote yes for a hearing.
All right, yes. Ms. Moran?
I also vote yes for the rehearing.
Mr. Perkins?
I'll vote yes, support it.
Mr. Burgess?
I'm going to vote no. I don't think we did anything wrong. I think the information, if it was brought out during the deliberative session, the session where the client, the applicant had wanted to, could have spoken, wouldn't have changed what we did.
The chair will also vote yes. granting a rehearing request to Ms. Rumwick by a vote of 4-1. Mr. Mackey, will that be heard at the next case, or will that be at a date to be determined based on the schedule?
And I think more than likely it will be, well, it'll be heard at the second meeting in April the 18th, provided the applicant will be required to come in and pay for postage for renoticing of the abutters, that there will be a rehearing.
Okay, so the earliest will be April 18th, pending that, so thank you very much. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll close my case and hand the evening back over to you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Corbett. And so next up on the agenda is minutes for February 1st, 2024. At this point, any amendments shall have been done. Did you have changes on that, Ms. Rio? Original. Okay, very good. So I'll take a motion for the minutes from February 1st to be approved as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Very good. Mr. Burgess has that motion. Could I have a second, please?
Cheryl second it.
Mrs. Moran has a second. All in favor of approval of those minutes from February 1st, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Minutes for February 15th, 2024. Were there any amendments noted for that one, Ms. Rio? None. Very good. So we will take a motion to have those minutes approved as presented. Mr. Donlin, you want to help out?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented for February 15th, was it?
Yes, sir. Mr. Obimba?
I'll second the motion.
Good, thank you, gentlemen. All in favor of accepting those minutes as presented, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. March 7th, 2024, I'd like a motion to table those minutes, please.
I'll make a motion to table those minutes.
Very good. All in favor of?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mrs. Moran. All in favor of that, tabling those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Very good. The board has no other correspondence or business before it this evening. All we will note is that we will not be meeting on April the 4th, the first Thursday of the month, and we will see everyone back here on the second Thursday of April. Other than that, if there's no other business to the
Mr.
board.
Chair, just
Yes, sir.
one item. Everybody should have received an email from the state planning office, which contained a link for the new and revised Board of Adjustment handbook. So you can view that online if you click on that link.
Very good. Thank you, Mr.
They're going to be
Mackey.
online on our,
And we do have the new little RSA books that we get every year, so we'll hand those out at the next meeting or when people come in to pick up their folders.
is
good.
that going to be given to the gentleman over here so he can post it on the website? Okay.
And note as well as the spring conferences, I think everyone has gotten notification to as well. Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Other than that, if there's no other business.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mrs. Moran has the motion. Mr. Burgess seconds to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. We're all out. Have a good evening, everybody.